So now we'll see that how the iron transport takes place and what are the different types of iron transporters. Heme iron comes from the blood, heme containing proteins which are present in meat and mitochondria, and in the plants also. In the mitochondria, iron is present wherever the transport of oxygen is required, then the heme iron will be present. Majority of the iron from digested food or supplements is absorbed in the duodenum by the enterocyte, the cell of the duodenum lining. Right, this you must have studied in anatomy, that what are the linings of the cell, what are the types of the cell, and how the transport takes place from the lumen into the inside of the cell. Actually, the enterocytes, they have a special molecules that allow to move iron into the body and to be absorbed. Iron absorption. Dietary iron can be absorbed as a part of proteins such as present in hemoglobin. Iron must be present in the ferrous form, a very important point. Absorption of iron takes place in the ferrous form. It can come in the one correct MCQ. And the ferric reductase enzyme, which is present on the enterocyte, brush border, duodenum, cytochrome B, reduces ferric iron to ferrous iron. So, how it is? Which enzyme reduces ferric iron to ferrous iron? Ferric reductase. And where this ferric reductase is present? On the enterocyte, brush border, duodenum, cytochrome B. So it reduces ferric iron to ferrous iron because for the absorption the ferrous iron is required. Now we'll see what are the transporters and how the iron transport takes place. Transferrin is the major iron transport protein and it transports iron through the blood. You'll just see from the figure that how the transport of iron takes place by the transferrin. And remember this, I have told you that the absorption of iron, it takes place in the ferrous form. But iron transport by transferrin is in the ferric form. We'll see that how it transport iron, how the ferrous form is oxidized to ferric form, which enzymes convert the ferric iron to ferrous iron to ferric iron, and how it is transported by transferrin. Transferrin is capable of binding 300 milligrams of iron, 300 milligrams per dl of iron. Transferrin bound iron in the ferric form and it is transported to the tissue cell that contains a transferrin receptor. We'll just see. Transferrin binds to the transferrin receptor and enters the cell. Transferrin bounded, okay, we'll just see first by the diagram. Here you can see that the transferrin, this transporter ferroportin. Ferroportin transport iron in the ferrous form. Then there are two other enzymes, Haphaestin and the ceruloplasmin. Ceruloplasmin and the Haphaestin, they convert ferrous iron to the ferric form. This ferric iron is then bounded to transferrin and transferrin transported to the cell containing the transferrin receptor. Here you can see the enterocyte. And this white portion, you just follow my pointer, it is the lumen of the intestine. Whereas this shows the intestinal membrane which is composed of the enterocyte. This is the circulation and this is the tissue cells. So what happens? Ferrous iron, which is transported by ferroportin, it is converted to ferric form by the two transporters or the enzymes ceruloplasmin and Haphaestin. So now the iron which is in the ferric form is able to bind transferrin. Transferrin it transport iron through circulation to all the tissue cells which are having the transferrin receptors. And in this way you can see that the transferrin bounded to the transferrin receptor, it enters inside the cell and it is provided, iron is provided to the tissue cells. Transferrin bounded iron is carried to the bone marrow cell and passes directly into the developing RBC to form hemoglobin. So now you can see that how the transport takes place. I think it has become clear. Again we'll go to the diagram. This white curve-like portions, within these curve-like portion is the intestinal lumen or the cavity, and this is lined by the intestinal lining. This is the intestinal lining, and this intestinal lining is composed of the intestinal cells which are known as the enterocyte. There is a transmembrane protein which is known as ferroportin. Ferroportin transport iron in the ferrous form. But you know that transferrin is not able to bind the ferrous form of iron, and therefore ceruloplasmin it converts ferrous form of iron to the ferric form. Now iron is in the ferric form and it can easily be transported by transferrin. All the cells having the transferrin receptors are able to accept transferrin containing iron. So now the transferrin and the receptor complex, it enters the cell and then it reaches the bone marrow and the cell RBCs which are synthesizing in the RBCs so that the hemoglobin can be synthesized. Transferrin bounded iron is carried to the bone marrow cell and passes directly into the developing RBC to form hemoglobin. Ferroportin. I have just shown you what is ferroportin. Ferroportin transport iron in the ferrous form. Ferroportin is a transmembrane protein. You have seen that it is present in the membrane, half on the membrane, half on the blood circulation. It is a transmembrane protein and transport iron in the ferrous form from inside of the cell to the outside of the cell. So we will see these 3 points. You see, ferroportin, it is a transmembrane protein. You can see here, this is the membrane and it is half on this side and half on this side. So it is present inside transmembrane protein, and this is the inside of the cell and this is the circulation. So ferroportin, you can say it is the exporter, iron exporter, because it transports iron from inside of the cell to the outside of the cell. And the iron transported by the ferroportin is in the ferrous form. I just told you ferroportin is the only known iron exporter. I have shown you that why we call it an iron exporter, because it transports iron from the inside of the enterocyte into the blood circulation. After dietary iron absorption into the cell of small intestine, ferroportin allows that iron to be transported out of these cells and into the bloodstream. You have just seen that how ferroportin transport iron from inside of the cell from the enterocyte into the blood circulation. There are two copper-containing proteins, Haphaestin and Ceruloplasmin, that catalyze this oxidation of iron. I have just now told you by the diagram, I have also explained it to you that these two enzymes, these two proteins, they catalyze the oxidation of ferrous iron to its ferric form. Why? Because oxidation is necessary, because transferrin cannot transport iron from the circulation to the cell required unless it is present in the ferric form. So, ferric form, these two oxidizes iron, and then transferrin, it transports this iron. Haphaestin. Haphaestin is found in the membrane of the enterocyte. It is also a transmembrane copper containing protein. Protein, you know that enzymes are always protein in nature. Ferrooxidase. We call it a ferrooxidase because it is oxidizing iron from the ferrous form to the ferric form. It is responsible for transporting dietary iron from the intestinal enterocyte into the circulatory system. You have just seen that how it helps in the transporting iron from the intestinal enterocyte into the circulatory system. It is limited to the enterocyte where absorption of iron takes place. Dual role of Haphaestin. Haphaestin is primary protein that perform this function. What the function? Absorption as well as transport, coupled with ferroportin. देखो, ferroportin it transport iron in the ferrous form. What does Haphaestin does? It converts iron to first function is that the ferroportin, the iron transported by the ferroportin, which is in the ferrous form, is oxidized to the ferric form by Haphaestin. Another role of Haphaestin is that it facilitates the absorption of iron from intestine to the bloodstream. Here you can see Haphaestin. It helps in the transport of iron as well as it helps in the conversion of ferrous iron to the ferric form so that it can be carried by the transferrin to the required tissue cells. Ceruloplasmin. Ceruloplasmin is the major protein in the blood that causes the copper dependent oxidase activity. Same activity as that of Haphaestin. So it also converts ferrous form of iron to the ferric form. So because you know, again I am repeating that it is necessary because transferrin can only transport iron in the ferric form. Divalent metal transporter 1. Divalent metal transporter 1. It is a protein which can transport iron across the enterocyte cell membrane into the cell. DMT1 bind and transport ferrous form of iron. So there are two proteins which transport iron in the ferrous form, DMT1 and ferroportin, right? So ferroportin, these two proteins, this can come in the one correct answer or even I can make the MCQ with the one incorrect answer. DMT1 expression, you know that it is a protein, it is an enzyme, okay? It is a protein you can say, not the enzyme, because it is not converting the ferrous or the ferric form of iron, it is simply transporting it. So protein, like other protein, it is synthesized by the DNA, DNA forms mRNA, mRNA forms a protein. Here I have used the term DMT1 expression, that is the synthesis of the protein is regulated by the iron body stores to maintain iron homeostasis. That is, it is synthesized. You can simply remember DMT1 is synthesized according to the body iron stores to maintain the iron balance. Okay? That is the amount of iron required for transport. Then accordingly DMT1 is synthesized. In the digestive tract, it is located on the apical membrane of enterocyte. where it carries out hydrogen coupled transport of divalent metal cation. What is divalent metal cation? Iron divalent, cation positive charge. How many positive charges? Two positive charges. Therefore, we can also call the ferrous form of iron as the divalent metal cation. We'll just see the diagram. And remember that it is coupled with the hydrogen transport. This can come in the one correct answer, that which transporter, that is the transporter with transport iron coupled with hydrogen ion is, you can get 1, 2, 3, 4 options. And what is the correct answer? DMT1. Here you can see this is the lumen of the intestine, okay? And this is the intestinal membrane. They have enlarged the one cell enterocyte of the intestinal membrane. And here you can see the DMT1, divalent metal transporter 1, and it is transporting iron in the ferrous form, and this is coupled with the transport of hydrogen inside the cell. So, in this way, the divalent metal cation, this is present, transporter, this is present in the apical border of the intestinal membrane, and it transport iron in the ferrous form. So two things are very important in this. You just draw a line on your lecture register, and on one side you write the transporter, on the other column you write the form of iron which is transported by this transporter, and in the third column you can write any additional information about the transporter. Now in the next lecture we'll see what blood tests are performed, what are the physiological factors which affect the iron level, and what are the deficiencies of iron.